I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, October the 2nd, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a bold, straight shooting telithromycin injection that does what it's supposed to do for you, for your cattle, and most importantly for your bottom line. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards, about 6,000 head for this Monday's regular feeder cattle auction. I got the text on them. They said on Sunday afternoon that they would start sorting at 4:30 in the morning on Monday and start to sell at 6 in the morning. They'll be going good by 7:30 or 8, guys. Get on to DVAuction.com and check them out. They've got lots of options for you to market your cattle. You can bring them into the sale there. They'll bring the market. You can bring them in if you're a smaller producer and you got some odd calves. Bring them in on Sunday afternoon and put them in the commingling part of the sale. Doesn't cost you any more, and they'll get to sell at the high time, and they'll sell with light cattle in bigger bunches and bring a lot more money than what they would just selling in odd lots. Or if you've got strings of cattle at home and you'd like to sell them right where they're at, get a hold of them, talk to them about putting them on one of the primetime livestock video sales that they have at Joplin Regional Stockyards. False fantasy futures, it's so frustrating that, and I talk about it all the time. I talk about your cattle futures being a mirage. They advertise these fancy prices that we're supposed to get off in the future, and then the closer and closer we get, they just evaporate. And speculators could make a pretty good living for themselves just shorting the cattle futures as they come to the forefront. And we saw that as we lost our September and went to October feeder cattle contract. We saw them completely give that away, and then we also saw that in your live cattle contracts as we came into October, because we'd been in a bastard month that didn't have a spot month there, the existing month. So, but now that we're moving into October, your fat cattle live cattle futures were trading at a big premium to what your cash fat cattle were bringing, and so they had to hurry up and get those out. We ran all the longs off with the threat of delivery. And not that you can tender for delivery the first day, it's a few days into the existing month, but it just went all the way away rather than bringing up your cash prices, and it does that every time. And very frustrating, but I tell you guys, if you didn't go out there and lock in your calves for if you're going to sell them later this fall, or if you've got yearlings to sell that you haven't sold, can't believe anybody has yearlings turned out that they haven't already sold. But you saw those LRPs out there. Well, the LRPs are still there, but they're not nearly as handsome as they were just a few days ago before we lost all that ground. I mean, on your November feeder cattle last week only, we lost $8.62 based on an 800-pound steer. Ouch. That's quite a bit. And so when you see those big prices out there on those LRP strike prices, you need to go ahead and lock those in. You say, well, they're too expensive. I hardly ever see one that costs $8.62. The furthest highest ones out might have paid that, but then the government's going to kick in and help you pay for that part of that premium, from 35 to 55% of it. You don't have to pay for it till you ship the cattle, and the cattle are going to be making so much money you wouldn't even care anyway, guys. But the cattle futures are just kind of empty-hearted and very disappointing when it starts coming to the forefront. They just peter out and completely give it all away. But I tell you what, it's hard to do that. Now, it's hard to bitch about anything right now because all classes of cattle are selling so well, and they're near all-time record highs, if not at all-time record highs. But you're still frustrated with the game, frustrated that we don't have any negotiated fed cattle sales to give price discovery to your fat cattle market. frustrated that your packers were using the Packers playbook last week, hardly buying any cattle FOB live or dressed delivered. They were buying them the opposite. They were buying them live delivered and dressed FOB if they had to give a little more for the cattle, because they didn't want those higher prices going into your weighted averages that set all the formula pricing. It's very frustrating, and the cattle futures are frustrating. They've always been that way. But despite extremely tight supplies of market-ready fed cattle, and our packers have really concentrated on quality ever since we come out of the COVID, and now, even though so much attention has been paid to quality, and they want the cattle, they want the carcasses big. Well, now all of a sudden we've only got $1 premium in the northern plains to the southern plains. That doesn't make any sense. Now, I'll agree the $6 and $8 didn't make any sense here a few months ago, but only $1 better. And then Iowa didn't trade hardly any cattle last week, negotiated. Now, they may have traded some more late on Friday after 2 o'clock, but only 16,000 and change up through Friday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That is about half what a typical week would be in Iowa there. But just kind of frustrating on some things, and I wanted to bring those up. Don't forget, Callaway Livestock Center is having a special cow sale this Thursday, October the 5th at 6 o'clock in the evening. Jack Harrison said going to have at least 1,000 cows, and probably more than that as he gets them coming in this week. But he's fully expecting 300 fall pairs, 300 fall bred cows, and another 300 spring calving cows that are going to be coming in. Quality is outstanding. Mid-Missouri is cow country, guys, and they will be 95% or more black, I'm sure. I did see they're going to have some F1 black baldies in there on some of the consignments. He's got several dispersals in there. If you're an older producer and you don't have anybody coming behind you, it's kind of a good time to pull the plug with all classes selling so well. But don't forget, wherever you're at, get on to DVAuction.com this Thursday, 6 o'clock in the evening. Get a hold of them early. Get approved to bid. You might want to get a load or two of cows out of there. Let's talk about your futures for all of last week on your cattle futures. Your October live cattle contract. Monday was down a dime. Tuesday was down 2.17. Wednesday was up a dime. Thursday up $1.60, and just about the time we thought things were going to be good. Friday they took back $2.30, with October contracts ending the week at 184.20. That was down 287 for the week. December live cattle contracts ended at 187.92, down 343 for the week. Those are sharp losses, guys. Even more sharp on your feeder cattle futures. October now is your front month. Feeder cattle, Monday they were down 32 cents. Tuesday down $4.95. Wednesday down $1.62. Thursday up $2.47, and then Friday took back another $2.25, with October contracts ending the week at $2.52.47, down $6.68 for the week. September went off the board at $2.52.11, exactly what your CME Cash Feeder Cattle Index ended the month at, and I told you that always comes true. It makes you wonder why we don't try to do that on your live cattle. But what would be the price? We achieved that CME Cash Feeder Cattle Index through auctions and reported direct trade. We don't have either of those things enough to make a market in your live cattle, so there's not enough price discovery to have cash settlement on live cattle. And then the threat of delivery scares off all of your longs, but we've already discussed that. November feeder cattle ended the week at 254.90. That was down 862, as I mentioned earlier. Fat cattle trade last week, up through Thursday of last week, they sold 51,900 head negotiated in your 5 area feeding region. Live prices, FOB, had a price range from 182 to 185. Very narrow, just $3. It was running $10 and $12 here just not long ago. But that was steady to $2 lower. Your weighted average on live steers up through Thursday was 183.59, and that was down about $1 compared to the previous week. But dress sales ranged in price from 288 to 291. That was steady to $2 lower. That's a $3 price spread, and that just primarily happens in the northern plains, sometimes northern Kansas too, but very narrow there on a dressed price range. And your dressed steer weighted average in your 5-area feeding region up through Thursday was 290.28, down about $1.50. So pretty stiff losses there if you went by your weighted average. Friday, we had a little bit of trade, but not much. 2,300 in Iowa. Like I said, 16,400 head for the week, and I'm not sure. I didn't hear of much late trade out of Iowa, so that's going to be really light. And I would assume packers are going to be short of some of your best grading cattle that typically come out of Iowa. But live sales on Friday in Iowa, 184 to 185. Dress sales, 288 to 289. Both of those are towards the top of the price ranges for the week. Nebraska, only 500 head on Friday, 23,000 for the week. Only dress sales on Friday from 290 to 292, and that's absolutely the top of last week's dress price range. In fact, we never saw any 292 until Friday in Nebraska. Kansas, 100 head is all, 8,900 for the week. All we saw on Friday in Kansas was 184 paid on some mixed cattle, steers and heifers together, which has not set the market. Texas, 1,400 on Friday, 7,900 for the week. And all they quoted on Friday in Texas was some off quality cattle and mixed cattle ranging from 181 to 183. But many of those will go into that weighted average. So then that goes right along with your Packers playbook, guys. Box beef cutout values were lower for the week, but there again, once again, we think maybe that we saw some solid footing there late in the week, and maybe they will start heading back north. But choice cuts, your weighted average on all of last week's choice cuts sales was $300.85. That was down $194 from your previous week's weighted average. Your late Friday sales were very near that, so about steady. Select cuts, all of last week's sales had a weighted average that was $2.35 lower than the previous week's at $278.31, and your late Friday sales on select cuts was about $2 lower than that weighted average. So lower on the selects. Choice select spread on your weighted average about $22.54, and we had 679 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings in those sales that I gave you, which is on the high side. Slaughter for last week, very disappointing. Only 612,000. That's 13,000 less than the previous light week, and 55,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Do you guys struggle to find cattle financing? There's a lot of lending institutions that don't even want to touch you guys if you're in wanting financing for cattle. They think it's too risky. They don't understand it. Well, Legend Bank does. In North Texas, you can get a hold of them, get a hold of Greg Brooks or Ricky Taylor, and they want to finance your cattle operation, and they understand it, and then they know how it works. So get a hold of them, and you won't have near the frustration that I know a lot of you have had trying to find cattle financing. Remember, Legend Bank is a member of the FDIC. All loans are subject to credit approval, and Legend Bank is an equal housing lender. For more information, go to legend.bank. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DVAuction, based on an 800-pound cash auction steer up through your middle 12 states, ended the week at 249.44. That was down $2.22 for the week. and you look at your trends out of your sale barns last week, feeder cattle were steady to $3 lower, calves $3 to $8 lower, and most of that is just because more calves are coming to town. And I've told you the last few weeks, a higher percentage of the feeder offerings are going to be calves as we go forward now. And you get so many calves that aren't weaned, haven't been worked, and big fat calves, and they all just pull down on your market for everything as a feeder. But we did see your middle weights, 6 and 7 weight long time weaned calves or light yearlings. We did see them show some flashes of bigger prices and some record prices on some middleweight cattle that we hadn't seen yet, because we just hadn't seen any big strings of quality middleweights coming to town. But your market was still good at the very end of the week. On Saturday in Fort Scott, Kansas, at the Fort Scott Livestock Market, they sold 54 steers, weighed 6'11" at $282 1/4. That's pretty handsome there. Your NationalBeefWire stick-out sale of the day was Santa Teresa Livestock Auction in Santa Teresa, New Mexico. These are all Mexican origin cattle. I've been telling you about them. Those are those hard, rugged cattle that don't die. Tato Medina, he's my buddy there. He runs that sale, owns it, and does a good job. He's got relationships with Mexican ranchers. They send those cattle in there. He gets them sorted up, ready to sell. Had over 1,500 head there. They sell on the U.S. side. And once they get in there to that sale, once they go through there, if you bought them in person through an order buyer or online, they're your cattle. No more hoops to jump through, guys. But you look at this is a pretty impressive market report, guys, from all Mexican origin cattle right there on the border. You can throw a rock to El Paso from there. It's not really out in the sticks, but look at some of your best tested weights. 192 steers in the 4-weight category, average 426 with a weighted average price of $298.78. 308 head of 5-weight steers, average 540 at $262.28. 101 6-weight steers, average 638 at $245.70. And 85 head of 7-weight steers, average 729 with a weighted average price of $244.67. Look at the heifers, and all the heifers will be spayed. They do not sell breedable heifers through there. But 178 head of 4-weight spayed heifers, average 438 at $251.81. 395 5-weight heifers, average 539 at $238.23. And 155 head of 6-weights, average 653 pounds with a weighted average price of $228.26. One stick-out deal that was included in those weighted averages there at Santa Teresa Livestock was some Mexican steers. 54 head of them weighed 729 and bring $252. Talk about some other individual quotes from all around. How about Bluegrass Stockyards out east in Richmond, Kentucky? Jim Dawes does a good job there, and they're still selling those yearlings well at the Bluegrass Stockyards. And it's starting to get later in the year. I mean, those cattle aren't going to have near the hair as cattle that originate in the middle part of the country. And it's going to get cold on them in their feeding, but they're still holding up really well. It's going to start tailing off. If you've got some yearlings you want to sell and you're out in that country, I'd get a hold of one of your bluegrass guys there and tell them you're ready to market those cattle while the market's still up for those, because it will wane off whenever we start seeing the cooler temperatures there. But by the time it gets cold, those cattle will be acclimated to it. But 164 steers in Richmond, Kentucky, weighed 794 and bring $250.60. How about Fort Pierre Livestock Auction in Fort Pierre, South Dakota? They had 118 fancy little 475-pound steer calves, bring $356. That's impressive. How about Bloomington Livestock Exchange in Bloomington, Wisconsin? Tell you what, they had a Holstein special there, and they have Holstein feeders, and then they have some half-bloods. A lot of people like to feed those half-bloods. They ring the bell on the hanging on the hook, guys. They had some half-bloods, half Angus, half Holstein. 56 steers in there, weighed 827, bring 226.50. Might want to get an order in there and buy some of those. But the most impressive quote that I saw late last week or over the weekend, and your Macrocin no BS top quote for the day, come out of Lexington Livestock Market in Lexington, Nebraska, was 198 steers, weighed 674, and bring 292. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.